Right, let's get more on Blackpool's Jake Daniels becoming the first professional player in British men's football to come out publicly in more than 30 years. PFA Chief Executive Maheta Molango joins us in the studio. And we're also joined once again by John Holmes, the founder of sport media LGBT+. So welcome to you both. Nice to see you. Look, Maheta, a number of organisations have helped Jake after he decided he wanted to come out publicly. Tell us exactly how the work that you've been doing has helped him.
Well, it's a great day. I think it's a great day because it means a role model for people who are going through a similar situation. Sending the message that you may be doubting as to whether the environment is ready for this type of announcement, and I think the response is very clear. Yes, it is. From our perspective, I think it is for Jake to tell his story and how you want to tell it. I think it's for him to decide. I think we're here to support and will kind of guarantee confidentiality around how this all kind of came about. The one thing I would say is for us it's important to put the structure in place to ensure that anyone can just be whoever he or she wants to be. And I think that's our role, and to be on the background, to be here if and when needed, and for whoever thinks about announcing something, to be there and help them to channel the message the right way.
Yeah, it's very much all about inclusivity, isn't it? Look, talk us through what the PFA's plans and processes are to support LGBTQ plus players and how it's evolved over the last few years in particular.
Yeah, I think I'll give you a specific example. For example, we've developed mental well-being workshops that address in general mental well-being, but always have a part of it which is aimed at finding a space where you can confidentially come to us and discuss whatever concern you have. And this is normally done by delivering the workshop and then followed by a questionnaire where there is a specific section around similar type of situations. And then there's a chance then for you to reach out to us if and when you deem appropriate, knowing that you understood the content, it was delivered to you, and now you have a space which is confidential to basically come and express whatever concern you may have. And sometimes it's just a simple kind of advice, sometimes it's kind of understanding how you can handle this with your own family. But I think it's important for us to be this independent sounding board that is not conflicted, where the players can come and talk about their sexuality, but can talk about any other thing that really concerns them.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it? We were talking about this earlier, weren't we, John, that not every coming out story involves an interview live on TV, does it? And nor should it.
No, that's right. And I think quite often it's the message behind the coming out story that's so important. For Jake here, he really wanted to talk about how coming out to his friends and family first kind of freed him up. Went out and scored 4 goals the next day and wanted to describe that feeling to let people know that there is a positive outcome on the other side of this big hurdle. And then I think there are lots of other kind of messages you can send through a coming out story, such as support for a campaign, or maybe you're talking about like a life event, you're in a relationship and you don't want to hide that anymore, or you just want to be your authentic self and everything that comes with that. So yeah, there's different scales, I think, of coming out, and actually as LGBTQ plus people we come out all the time to different people in different ways. So Jake has taken a very, very big step, one that I think we all acknowledge is so courageous, but we wouldn't want anyone to feel like that had to be the scenario for them as well. There are lots of different ways that they can get the support that they need and send a message at the same time.
Maheta, how heartened are you by the reaction to this? Because arguably, when you dip your toe into social media and put Jake's name in, it's a really positive response that everyone's giving.
It's been fantastic. I think it really shows that football has evolved, society has evolved. And if I'm honest, ever since I joined the PFA, my feeling was that there's a generation of players who are really smart, they see the big picture, they're respectful, they care about the issue, they want to understand certain issues, and I think it's very encouraging. I think it's really moving away from this perception of players being those 11 spoiled kids running around and being kind of think that they're above the law. That's not the case. They're sensitive, they understand the situation. The level of encouragement has been fantastic and support. So I think it should just kind of prompt anyone who has any doubt about just expressing who he or she is to just feel comfortable doing that, because I think the environment is ready.
Is there still a necessity to do this, though? Probably, because if you dip your toe in, a lot of people are saying, why do we need to know? So what's the significance, what's the relevance of this, do you think, John?
Well, I think today actually is a really pivotal day for people to think about that. Today is an awareness day called the International Day Against Homophobia, biphobia and transphobia. And this is an international, a global movement that's been held annually for many, many years. And it reminds us that there are places around the world that sadly don't have the same LGBTQ+ rights that we enjoy in this country.
Yeah.
So, the Premier League, the EFL, has a huge worldwide reach. And so Jake's story will be going to parts of the world where sadly, there will be people really struggling in very, very difficult circumstances. They will take, I think, a lot of hope and perhaps some inspiration too, in a different way to what LGBT+ people in this country might experience. So I think it's that wider context and the power of football, which, as we know, it can be absolutely phenomenal. And this is another example of that.
Do you think that's potentially why, we have never seen this perhaps happen before, because there are, sponsors, there's all sorts of involvement, certainly higher up the echelons of the game, that perhaps might frown upon something like this? Because, like you say, in some countries, homophobia is still alive and well, isn't it?
You made a very valid point. I think it's about role models. It's about having someone that inspires you, someone who's going through something similar than you, and has had the courage to come out. And then you see the reaction, you're thinking, well, maybe I can also express whatever I think I want to express. So I think it's role models. I think it's equally ensuring that, at board level, executive level, you have a more diverse and inclusive view of the world. I think you cannot have a different outcome if you always have the same people. So I think it is important that we ensure that, not just on the pitch, but outside the pitch, the people who think about policy think it with a different perspective to the world than the one that maybe was taken a few years back.
Yeah, I mean, there'll be both people directly involved in the game and regular fans who want to show their support, John. So tell us a bit about being an ally in this sort of situation.
I think allyship, is something that people can show in lots of different ways. Sometimes, you might be in an environment where you won't know if anyone in that space is LGBTQ plus or not, but you could send them a positive message. If it's a group of young people, for example, you can work with Stonewall, with the PFA equality team, with academies, and educate by letting them know that if they are struggling with this part of who they are, there are people that they can talk to about that. And there's some really good representations, really good positive representation in media at the moment. There's a TV show that's had real traction here called Heartstopper, which you might have heard about, and that is showing a wider audience that young people experience and navigate these things in a way that perhaps we weren't familiar with when we were younger.
Absolutely.
So that's really encouraging. I think the women's game, we've just gone through that women's squad for the Euros. Again, there's lots of inspirational role models, LGBTQ there, that we can draw upon and learn from their stories too. So as Maheta was saying, different perspectives. For men's football, actually the women's game is providing some really good perspectives on this.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Look, Maheta Blackpool have rightly been praised for, creating this environment where Jake felt very safe to come out. Do you think that this is going to help other clubs kind of reflect on whether they've got that kind of environment that their players might feel the same and want to do the same?
Absolutely. I think they should be commended for what they did and how they handled the situation. And again, it's about having someone that leads the way and shows how things can be done. So I think it will inspire people. It will people confident that it could be done in a nice way, in a smooth way, and respecting all the time the wish of the player. Again, I think it's his decision, it's his moment, and we just need to respect whatever he or she wants to do with something which we consider to be a very personal decision.
Yeah, I'm interested in this. The PFA's own survey on online abuse found that homophobia is the most common form of abuse sent to male footballers. So what help does the PFA offer players who are targeted, and how do they help to try to combat it? What do you do?
Education. I think education is the most important thing, both on the player side as well on the fan side. I think a lot of those comments is out of ignorance. It's a lack of understanding of the world, it's a lack of understanding that the world has evolved. And I think what we also work hard on is the word that you use. Understanding what is still acceptable and what is not acceptable and should never have been acceptable.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the problem that you see sometimes in football is where's the line in terms of banter? And there's stuff which are just not acceptable. It's not fun, it's not funny, it shouldn't even be considered something being funny. I think it takes education. Spending time on explaining to people what is acceptable, what is not acceptable.
What does that education look like then, Maheta? Does it look like, billboards? Does it look like campaigns, Rainbow Laces campaigns? What does it actually physically look like? Does it look like a video at half-time? What do you propose to do in order to make sure that this is a very safe place for players to come out and it not just be, it just be considered as a very normal thing to do?
But obviously, our focus is on the player, and the focus of the fans probably more the authorities who deal with that. But I think from a player perspective is really make the fans understand that those are human beings. And some of the abuse that you'd not tolerate on the street, why would you then come to a stadium and become a different person and abuse these very same kind of players who ultimately tries to do his best to score a goal or prevent a goal being scored, but he's a human person, as you are. And I think it's a bit more awareness, a bit more tolerance, and I think it's education. I think sometimes football is a reflection of society, and I think what happened in the stadium needs to make us reflect about where are we heading as a society. If in the 21st century you just feel like calling a person who's homosexual a name or a black person, this shouldn't just be tolerated. And I think it's just, but again, it's a fact, it's happening, and hence we need to try to tackle this as much as we can by educating people and raising awareness.
I was just going to say, the players actually are educating themselves through their platforms. We've got some tremendous allies like Jordan Henderson and Connor Cody. I think when we look at some of the content that Premier League clubs particularly produced during the Rainbow Laces campaign at the end of last year, many of which Sky Sports was able to share with a bigger audience as well. You've got Cody, you've got Henderson, who are involved in that, and because they've got such big platforms and people look up to them, I think they're able to send some really educational messages through that, and that's the kind of thing that has a real impact.
Yeah, I would agree. But just finally then, Maheta, what would your message be to perhaps a player that's sitting at home watching and thinking, gosh, I feel like I kind of want to do something, I'm not sure what to do though. What would your message be to them for the PFA?
Feel comfortable being whoever you want to be, and there's no pressure, not because Jake decided to come out, that you need to come out. You just need to do whatever you think is right for you to do. It's a personal decision, and I think whoever is thinking to go out publicly now has a response in the sense of saying this has now happened, and the reaction was very positive. And hence, if you feel like coming out, you need to know that people will be there to support you, that the union will be there to support you in whatever shape or form you think that we could support you.
Feels like times are changing. Fingers crossed. Lovely to meet you properly in the flesh. Lovely to see you again, John. Thanks for joining us.